After September 11, George W. Bush, the then President of the United States, denounced the so-called list of countries that were part of the Axis of Evil, which would announce the future war in Iraq in 2003, then overthrowing the regime of Saddam Hussein and months later leading to his capture and eventually resulting in his execution. That sent a very clear message to the other countries in the so-called United States' Axis of Evil that they had to do something or they would face the same fate as Saddam. In Libya, Gaddafi quickly rushed to normalize his political relations with the West, cooperating with the United States by sharing information about Islamic terrorist cells and even hosting the so-called CIA black sites where prisoners linked to extremist groups were then interrogated. Gaddafi believed that cooperating with the West would keep him and Libya alive and safe. On the other hand, Kim Jong-il, the North Korean leader and father of the current leader of North Korea, was also on that list. But he decided to take a different path. Instead of cooperating with the West and trying to get closer, he chose to go all in, stepping hard on the accelerator and developing his nuclear weapons. They were two completely opposite positions, cooperation on one side and militarization on the other. Time went by, and the result was that Gaddafi ended up being bombed by his so-called new friends, in quotes, and was later lynched and killed. While North Korea not only remains untouched, but more than that, is now starting to become a significant player, taking advantage of the problems faced by its neighbors, Russia and China, while maneuvering through the West's disorientation. But how can a country with a gross domestic product the size of Maranhão's and a population only slightly larger than the state of Minas Gerais manage to bring Russia, China, Japan, South Korea, and the United States to the same negotiating table to negotiate on their terms? It's surreal, and the answer comes down to two things: strategic shrewdness and obviously the atomic bomb. In today's video, we'll actually look at North Korea's nuclear capabilities in the series The Modernization of Nuclear Programs. But before that, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share the video with everyone you know, and turn on the notification bell to stay up to date with what's happening on the channel. And make sure to follow us on other social networks as well. Don't rely only on YouTube. Follow us on Telegram and Instagram, that way you'll be sure to stay updated on the channel's news and on geopolitics. My name is Geopolitica Mundial, and this is the Geopolitica Mundial channel. The Democratic People's Republic of Korea, also known as North Korea, maintains an active but highly opaque nuclear weapons program that is difficult to understand. Intelligence agencies, both governmental and private, estimate that as of January 2024, North Korea possessed around 50 nuclear weapons. Based on statements from North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and the country's expanding show of force, it seems likely that North Korea intends to further increase its inventory of nuclear warheads. This is reinforced by the fact that in 2024 and 2025 North Korea intensified its short and long-range missile tests, although it did not conduct any confirmed nuclear explosions. More specifically, in January 2024, Pyongyang also announced that it had tested its new unmanned underwater nuclear attack vehicle. The HM, an autonomous torpedo capable of carrying warheads, which according to the South Korean government can accommodate tactical warheads. And on October 31, 2024, the North Koreans launched a new solid-fueled intercontinental ballistic missile called the Hwasong-19, using an engine that had never been tested domestically before, signaling possible Russian technological support. Chinese sources report several recent North Korean armament activities. As in January 2024, there was a recorded underwater test of the Tsunami 5 nuclear system in the Eastern Seas in response to joint exercises conducted by the United States, South Korea, and Japan. In the same year, Pyongyang carried out 2 ballistic and cruise missile tests. Also, on April 28 and 29, 2025, the destroyer Choi Hyun, along with the new destroyer Choi Hyun, conducted several missile tests, including supersonic cruise missiles and strategic cruise missiles, with the Choi Hyun suffering a maneuvering accident on May 21st, and it is now under review to determine if it can be reused. The estimates for North Korea are based on calculations of the amount of fissile material, plutonium, and highly enriched uranium that the country is believed to have produced for use in nuclear weapons. Analyzing the numbers and types of North Korean warheads and delivery systems is full of uncertainties due to the obvious limitation or lack of reliability of public sources. Many of the data I will present here are derived from sources outside North Korea, including satellite images, reports, and statements from the governments of the United States, South Korea, Japan, and a bit from China, as well as analyses by experts and academic publications and state media. North Korea has conducted, up to today in 2025, a total of 6 nuclear tests, one in 2006, 2009, 2013 twice, in 2016, and most recently the last one in 2017. Despite construction work at the Punggye-ri nuclear test site during 2023 and other apparent preparations for a 7th test, no test has occurred so far. North Korea claims to possess tactical nuclear weapons and oversized hydrogen bombs in its arsenal. North Korea has repeatedly signaled through doctrinal commitments and tests of new capabilities that it will continue developing its short and long-range nuclear capabilities, both for deterrence and potentially as a response to any perceived threat. According to North Korea's 2022 legislation, which updated and revoked the 2013 law, North Korea's nuclear forces must be regularly ready for action. The new law also clarified that nuclear weapons could be used preemptively, contradicting a previous promise in response to a perceived and considered inevitable attack, whether nuclear or not, against North Korea's leadership, its nuclear command structure, or another important strategic target. The law also suggested that North Korea could use nuclear weapons to take the initiative during a war. In other words, North Korea does not guarantee that it will only use nuclear weapons as a reaction to an attack, and even less that it will not use them at all. In September 2022, the leader of North Korea declared that the law codified North Korea's status as an irreversible nuclear state, and that the country would never give up its nuclear weapons. On the other hand, according to this same 2022 law, North Korea would not threaten or use nuclear weapons against non-nuclear states unless they participate in aggression or attack against North Korea in collusion with other states that possess nuclear weapons, a clause that likely refers to South Korea and Japan. North Korea's capabilities to produce and separate plutonium for the manufacture of nuclear weapons are located at the Yongbyon Nuclear Scientific Research Center in North Pyongyang Province. And since International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors were forced to leave the country in 2009, the agency has been monitoring North Korea's nuclear program using open source information and satellite imagery. This Yongbyon complex houses an aging 5 megawatt electric graphite moderated research reactor from which plutonium can be extracted. The reactor has been operational since late 2021 with intermittent pauses for maintenance or plutonium reprocessing. The most recent of these pauses was in September 2023 when a joint intelligence assessment by South Korea and the United States indicated that North Korea had halted reactor operations to restart reprocessing. It is still unclear whether North Korea has resumed construction of the 50 megawatt reactor at Yongbyon, which began in the 1980s as various activities observed in satellite images suggest that construction may have resumed in early 2022. However, since then, there have been no visible construction activities. In May 2024, renovation work was observed at the steam plant of the radiological laboratory used for reprocessing signaling preparations to extract plutonium. At the Punggye-ri test site, an analysis from April 2024 detected the access road to tunnel number 3 being cleared of snow, indicating activity at the site, which keeps the facility ready for use at any time. Over the past decade, North Korea has also been building an experimental light water reactor in Yongbyon. An estimate suggests that starting as early as 2025, North Korea could produce about 20 additional kilograms of weapons-grade plutonium per year with this light water reactor at a rate roughly 4 or 5 times higher than the 5 megawatt reactor we mentioned earlier. producing reliable estimates of North Korea's plutonium stockpile is a very difficult task, as it's hard to assess the efficiency, power levels, and operating schedules of the reactors, as well as the amounts of plutonium consumed in each nuclear test and warhead produced. Different theories about these factors result in different stockpile estimates, but most estimates settle on a growing stockpile of 60 to 80 kilograms of plutonium by the end of 2023. To compensate for its limited capacity to produce weapons-grade plutonium, it is widely believed that North Korea has shifted its focus to the production of highly enriched uranium for use in nuclear warheads. However, we have many uncertainties regarding North Korea's uranium enrichment capabilities and its stockpile of enriched uranium. That's because North Korea produces yellow cake, a raw material for reactor fuel rods, at its Pyeongsan uranium concentration plant in the Nanchon Chemical Complex. And in August 2023, the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency reported that North Korea continued to operate its expanded gas centrifuge enrichment facility in Yongbyon, as well as a possible secret centrifuge facility in Kangsan. Analysts agree that North Korea has the capability to produce enriched uranium, but there are many gaps regarding how much has actually been produced, especially because of uncertainties about activities in Kangsan and the possibility of other secret enrichment sites. The stockpile estimates used in the CIPRE assessment, the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute on North Korea's nuclear arsenal, suggest a range between 280 and 1,500 kilograms of enriched uranium. It is not clear how many nuclear weapons North Korea has produced with its fissile material, how many have been deployed on missiles, and what the designs and military characteristics of the country's weapons are. But the South Korean government announced in May 2025 that the fissile material accumulated by the North so far is enough for about 90 nuclear warheads, of which about 50 are believed to have already been assembled. These new estimates are much higher than those used up until 2023. The old forecasts mentioned between 20 and 60 possible warheads. Furthermore, most of North Korea's nuclear tests have yielded between 5 and 15 kilotons. As a result, agencies estimate that North Korea has used only a small portion of its highly enriched uranium for thermonuclear weapons, likely using most of it to produce a larger number of simple, single-stage fission weapons that can be launched by medium-range or possibly intermediate-range ballistic missiles. Most of these warheads are likely simple fission weapons with possible yields between 10 and 20 kilotons, similar to those demonstrated in the 2013 and 2016 tests, along with some more powerful warheads with composite uranium and plutonium cores, or more basic thermonuclear designs. Although the media has given wide attention to the development of nuclear weapons for North Korea's long-range strategic missiles, in recent years Kim Jong-un has made it quite clear that there is a need to make nuclear weapons smaller and lighter for tactical uses. The eventual deployment of tactical weapons also raises questions about North Korea's nuclear command and control, especially regarding the possibility that Kim may have previously delegated nuclear launch authority to his field commanders. This means that, in the event of a conflict, field commanders would not need to wait for orders from Kim. They can take the initiative on their own. North Korea is increasing both the size and capability of its ballistic missile force, which consists of domestically produced missile systems with ranges varying from a few hundred kilometers to more than 12,000 kilometers. Since 2016, the country has been developing and producing various systems with progressively greater ranges and increasingly sophisticated delivery capabilities. But it is not clear which North Korean missiles can carry nuclear warheads, and there is enormous uncertainty about the operational status of the intermediate-range missiles, especially because several systems displayed or launched in tests over the years may have only been part of technology demonstration programs and not actually intended for operational deployment. And just to be clear, every time I mention a North Korean missile, it doesn't necessarily mean that missile can carry nuclear weapons. That's because we have to consider the issue of miniaturization of North Korean nuclear weapons. Because what a lot of people forget is that just as important as developing nuclear weapons is having a way to hit targets with them, and for that it's necessary to make them in a size and weight that can be carried by a ballistic missile, a process just as difficult as developing a nuclear bomb itself. But I want to talk about that later, because for now I want to focus on their missile capability. In January 2024, North Korea had several types of short-range ballistic missiles, including older liquid-fueled systems, possibly based on Soviet Scuds, and more modern solid-fueled missiles of their own design. Between the beginning of 2019 and the end of 2023, these missiles were tested or launched about 70 times, being tested from various launch modes, including wheeled and tracked mobile launchers, rail launchers, submerged launchers, and ground silos. In March 2023, North Korea apparently conducted its first short-range test from a rather rudimentary silo, an important change from the country's long tradition of prioritizing mobile launch modes for its missiles, because it signals not only the United States as a target, but also South Korea itself. In addition to testing maneuverable re-entry vehicles designed to evade the missile defense systems of neighboring states, such as South Korea and Japan, North Korea has 4 types of medium-range ballistic missiles with different types of hypersonic glide vehicles. All except the Hwasong-12 variants were likely operational as of January 2024. Assuming North Korea can produce sufficiently compact warheads, these devices would be its most likely nuclear delivery systems. The 3 operational missiles have ranges of 1,000 to 1,200 kilometers, which means they could reach targets anywhere in South Korea or Japan. The intermediate-range ballistic missile, Ransom-10, with an estimated range of over 3,000 kilometers, has not conducted flight tests since 2016 and 2017 and has likely been replaced by more sophisticated missile programs, most likely in collaboration with Russia. And finally, the intercontinental ballistic missiles, the ICBMs. North Korea has displayed 5 types of intercontinental missiles. The country has prioritized building and deploying them so they can try to deliver a nuclear warhead to targets within the United States. There is still enormous uncertainty in American assessments about North Korea's long-range missile capabilities. Although North Korea has never launched an intercontinental missile on an operational maximum range trajectory, it is highly likely that at least some of these systems have already been deployed operationally. The Hwasong-17 stands out, large enough to accommodate multiple warheads, but this capability had not been demonstrated until January 2025. This missile has been tested at least twice, with the most recent test occurring in March 2023, reaching a possible range of 15,000 kilometers. In April 2023, North Korea launched a new solid-fuel ballistic missile known as the Hwasong-18. The fact that North Korean state media characterized the most recent tests of the Hwasong-15, 17, and 18 as launch exercises rather than technical validation tests suggests that all 3 systems have already been deployed operationally. Given the differences between the 3 missiles, it is likely that they were designed to operate at the same time and not as substitutes for one another. But we still have the cruise missiles, where by the end of 2023, North Korea had developed at least 2 types of land attack cruise missiles that, according to explicit statements from the country itself, are designed to carry nuclear weapons. And finally, the sea-launched missiles, where for several years North Korea operated only one ballistic missile launching submarine, the experimental Gorai-class submarine. This submarine can carry and launch only one submarine-launched ballistic missile. But in September 2023, North Korea launched a new tactical nuclear submarine, apparently adapted from an older version, with the capacity for 10 vertical missile launch tubes, 4 of which are for long-range missiles. Although this submarine represents a significant improvement in terms of payload once it enters service, its original class is still from the Soviet era and has a very noisy design, making it easy to detect and with a very limited submerged range. During the launch of this submarine, Kim Jong-un announced a plan to convert all existing medium-sized submarines into attack submarines equipped with tactical nuclear weapons. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, in 2023 North Korea unveiled and tested several new versions of a nuclear attack underwater drone. North Korean media claim that the mission of this system is to stealthily infiltrate operational waters and cause a large-scale radioactive tsunami through an underwater explosion with the goal of destroying enemy carrier strike groups and important operational ports. The technology, it seems, was achieved in cooperation with Russia. And finally, the aspects of miniaturization. Because just as important as having all these missiles is making the warheads fit into those missiles. On April 18th, 2024, I released another intelligence analysis video here on the channel talking about how the real North Korean threat was its thousands of artillery pieces stationed on the border with South Korea, capable of bombarding several key points in the country, especially the capital, Seoul, in just a few minutes, and that given the very large numbers, it would take several weeks, maybe even months, for the South Koreans, even with the support of the United States, to be able to neutralize these threats, which would then be unfeasible given the level of destruction that would have already been carried out in the South because of these artillery pieces. And that nuclear weapons were not the real threat after all, they still didn't have a way to make the warheads fit into the missiles. A lot of lay people who have never researched the topic or studied the subject even minimally wrongly claim that no, the North Koreans already did have miniaturization capability, pointing as proof to a photo of Kim next to what would be a miniaturized warhead, but in practice it just shows a metal can, because we have no way of knowing if that is actually a miniaturized warhead. So, as is normal here on social media, people don't really know what the word evidence means. This kind of statement can then be summarily dismissed and ignored. And after more than a year, we can say that the North Koreans still haven't developed this miniaturization capability. Analyses of recent flights suggest North Korean efforts in multiple warheads, but they do not confirm miniaturization. For example, on June 26, 2024, Pyongyang claimed to have launched 3 multiple-target warheads. But South Korean thermal images show that the first stage failed at 100 kilometers of altitude, without confirmed release of multiple target warheads or countermeasures. This indicates that the test likely failed and did not validate any miniaturized warhead design. On October 31, 2024, a Hwasong-19 class ballistic missile flew for 1,000 kilometers at an altitude of 7,700 kilometers, using an 11-axle launcher, a larger version than the Hwasong-18. Experts noted that this increase in size provided about 1,100 kilometers more range and sustained a booster for an additional minute, which is much more useful for propelling a heavier payload. And photos of the launch show a post-boost vehicle with multiple nozzles consistent with preparation for multiple independently targetable warheads, but there is no indication that any projectile was ejected. In other words, despite these stage separation and post-boost test capabilities, North Korea still hasn't demonstrated real success in launching multiple nuclear warheads. That is, not only has it not proven miniaturization, but the evidence so far rules that out. Since North Korea's last atomic test in September 2017, there haven't been any new underground nuclear tests, and as a result, there is no recent seismic or isotopic data that could prove miniaturization. On the other hand, it's likely that this is about to change later this year in 2025 or at the latest in 2026. Because information from April 2025 indicates that North Korea sought technical assistance from Russia to improve the implosion design of miniaturized nuclear warheads. This collaboration accelerated North Korea's advances in miniaturizing nuclear warheads for integration into various missile systems. Thank you all, I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to share the video with everyone you know to help the Geopolitical Mundial channel keep going. Your support is very important. Hugs, and see you in the next video.